What's happening, guys? Curtis here from the Social Work Race. This is a tough topic. This topic is regarding social workers predicting future harm. Listen, on this topic, a lot of parents have messaged in the comments about how dare they remove our children, or why are they predicting, how do they predict harm in the future? Let's talk about it. And just to bear in mind, this platform, as much as people hate social workers at times, this platform is about helping people understand it. I actually get a lot more support, even from people who have lost their children to the system, a lot more support and requests for advice. That's what this platform is about. It's about learning and support for families. A lot of people don't like it, but that's just the way it is. But to be honest with you, I've had far more support, overwhelming actually, especially over the last couple of months. Let's see where we go with this. So in social work, one of the things that can frustrate people is, how do we look into the future and know that somebody will be hurt? We don't. That's the truth. But I'm going to break it down as to how it happens, and hopefully it will be good for you as a parent, okay? And this is really for parents. Social workers, you can learn, but this is for parents, okay? As a deputy manager in a local authority, my job was to assess whether a case went to a social worker or not. Sometimes we'd close it. Sometimes I would refer it because I think it's a lot higher, or make sure I give it to the right social worker with the right skills because of the concerns laid out. And in that, I'd have to do a little bit of research on the history. Is there any history with the family? Yes or no? And if the same thing keeps coming up, sometimes you get cases where there was a pattern. This is the fourth referral. I've had a family where they, in a space of a year, had 4 referrals, okay, for the same thing. And in every assessment, and I did some of those assessments as well, I couldn't pin down concrete evidence, right, of what was going on. But I had an inkling, but I couldn't prove it. So I knew that I was actually going to close a case, even though the other professionals were against it. Legally, there wasn't enough threshold to escalate the matter, but I knew it was coming back in because the work needed to be done by that family wasn't being done, right? So I want you to understand that that happened a lot. So I have to determine risk and what it means for the future. So I'm looking at the child and I'm trying to determine, is this going to hurt the child? Is the child at risk? Is it harm, significant harm, minor harm? And what are the attitudes of the family? What does this mean? I want to tell you maybe a story or two actually. Let me give an example of why we predict future harm. I worked with a mum, and let me say, this is one of my favorite people I ever worked with, okay? She had more than 2 children removed from her care, right? And she became pregnant, and then we were going to court. So the removal is an instant, but we have to go to court, and it was a very long process. It took about 6 months. But then we knew that she was pregnant after about 3-4 months, right? So it took about 6 months for us to start doing some serious work with the parent. Now, the whole time, everybody was telling me, because they knew her better than I did over the years, she's still a drug user. We did the testing and so forth. And the mum was like, listen, I love being a mum and I want to give it a last shot. Can you help me make this shot worth it? And my job is to ensure that they have every chance. Now, at this point, I'm sure people in the comments will say, yeah, right, you wanted to take that child. No, I didn't. I want the parent to have the right to be a parent, because I can't imagine, I'm working with someone for nearly a year. In fact, I worked with them for a year. You get to know someone and you can see their heart. They want to change. They want to give up the drugs, but it's all they've ever known. All they've ever known is domestic abuse, and they feel safe in that. So when I'm working with this parent, I have to ask myself the question, are they saying the right thing? Just to maintain, just to keep the child, yes or no? And that is very difficult to do if every time you meet them, they're showing you all the right things and all the good things. The home's tidy, they haven't got any debts, but we know from external evidence that they were associating with questionable people. There's a high risk of domestic abuse still, even though they're not in a relationship, and lots of other little bits. But this parent is like, I want to change. Can you move me? Can you make my life different so that I can have a shot with my child? Now, I want you to understand that the decision to remove a child isn't only on the social worker. It's a joint decision, and usually it's actually a decision technically out of our hands. We are told really based on our assessment which way this goes. So the decision really was to say, look, we're going to give you every opportunity. This is weird for you listening. We're going to give you every opportunity to keep the child, but we're also applying to court for the child's removal, which is really complex. The mum worked with me really well. And then at some point she came back to me and then said, look, I'm a drug addict. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it in time. Take my child and make sure my child's looked after, right? Beautiful person. I really like this person. It's really sad. She said, look, I'm putting my child through unnecessary things. Take my child. When I first got this case, a lot of people around me were saying, she's not going to do it. She's not going to do it. So I can do one of two things. I can say, I agree. I'm going to follow all yours lead. Or I can say, let's do this independently. And I did that. And it turns out that they were right. Now, they're not always right. But they made a prediction on the future, which doesn't seem fair. It's not fair on a child. It's not fair on a parent to be told what you're going to be like in 6 months' time or a year. Or if you're going to be a good parent, whether you'll make changes, it's not easy. But let's look, for example, at Sarah Sharif. Sarah Sharif's case was this. There was some evidence that there was abuse going on. And we have to make that decision. Is there any risk of future harm? And the answer was yes. But who makes that call and how is that call made? Sarah Sharif's story is like, there's evidence, but people can change. Or there's evidence, but is the evidence correct? Is it accurate? We don't go into homes and say, I want to see your child's body, take off their clothes. I want to see if there's bruises every visit. We don't do that. And we really can't do that. It's actually abusive. So where do we go with this prediction of future harm? Baby P, Arthur Labinho, they're sadly children who have died. Sarah Sharif, they've all died because we are trying not to make too harsh a prediction on the future, or we pull back so much, or we allow the disguised compliance to get in the way of our determinations. But if we were to push in, like everybody said in the comments on these stories, where were social services? What were they doing? And it's not just social services, it's other professionals just as much involved, probably more so. You have to ask yourself the question, at what point do we, how does a social worker intervene? Do we force our way in and say, right, this is what, just in case your child dies in the future, we demand to see your child in a certain way, in our way, which is deeply oppressive. We can't see in the future, but we have to make some predictions based on evidence. And we make that based on the patterns. We make that based on, well, what did we hear? What was said? That's why we get Section 47 inquiries, a child protection inquiry, say, look, we heard something quite serious. A lot of the time they're shut down. Most of the cases that come through are shut down. Some of them are malicious allegations or they're misunderstandings. We shut them down. We don't want to intervene with families aren't necessary. But sometimes we keep cases open based on, actually, this is serious. We don't know whether it's true or not. But if we go home tonight with what we've heard, whether it's true or not, do we leave the child with the parent? Is it safe? And that's a tough decision. Sometimes it's really clear. You go in a house, it's like almost like a bando, a trap house, whatever. Lots is going on, it's clear. We see a pile of drugs in the corner. We see the kids, the home is extremely unkept. The children are not being going to school, they're not washed. We don't know how much they're eating. We don't know how well they're doing in that environment. But from what we're seeing, we're worried. And whose standards are we using to determine what safe and unsafe is. I've been into many homes where I'm not happy at the condition of the home. Do I say we need to remove the children until the house is tidy? Whose standard of tidy are we talking about? This is the complexity of social work. And I have to make a prediction. Will this stay the same? Will it get worse or will it get better? And then I have to say, with that, what would the impact be on the child? And that's a tough one. So we look at patterns, and then what you're going to get is you're going to get a single white female, a single black female, a single white man, married man, black man, African man, West Indian man, Asian man, young black British, old black British. All of these different people with their different experiences will be looking at the same scenario. And I can guarantee you, you won't always get the same determination. It's tough. And there's a shortage of social workers. So local authorities are taking what they can get. And this is the complexity of what we look at when we look at harm. And for parents, I don't suggest for 1 second that this is easy, but it is what it is. What do we do? Do we walk away because you want us to walk away? Or do we wait for another death? And you know something? It's after these children die when we haven't been able to detect the truth of the risk that everyone says social services messed up. And it's after these incidents that local authorities will get guidance to ask us to push harder into families' lives, which aggravates families. It aggravates them massively. How dare you? Because we're stepping into your personal space and you're going to feel judged and you're going to feel like the system wants to take your child. A lot of people say that in the comments. It's absolutely not true. We do not want to take your child, but it looks like that because we have something in our hand. And a lot of parents do not understand the way that the system works with risk and harm. We look at patterns. We look at the voice of the child. What did the child say? What did the parents say? It doesn't add up. So we have to make a determination and prediction of the future, the next week. If we leave the child in a home, can we assure that the child will not be coached? Happens all the time. So the truth is, it's not going to be perfect. There's no way to make a uniform, this is the way we should go with a family, because every family is that dynamic. And we can't be treating every family as the same. So how do we predict the future? We just try. We do our best. We have a set of thresholds in the local authorities that we work for, and we have experience. And as that grows, we try to make better decisions. But honestly, it's almost impossible to be right 100% of the time. Did I say that? Impossible. I think I did say that. It's almost impossible to be right 100% of the time. It's never going to be 100%. What I can say is, yes, I do agree that in 1 or 2 cases, not many, but 1 or 2 cases, and not from what's online either, I get a lot of DMs. What's online isn't necessarily, from my DMs through social media, isn't really accurate because it's one side of the story. I have to see the assessment, which I don't want to see, by the way. Not anybody is. I'm not supposed to see it, but I can imagine that some social workers have presented or exacerbated risk and harm, and that can be destructive. I've worked with families who felt that deeply. I remember one family, they were screaming and shouting at me. I was in hospital with them and their child. I felt that it shouldn't have happened, but it was a referral because of history. Because children were removed before. Whenever you have a new child, we have to have another look, another assessment. And the family was so defensive. They were shouting at me, they were crying their eyes out. And we spent about half an hour trying to let them know, we're not trying to take your child. We have to do this assessment. We're obliged to. They were saying to me, you took our child on false pretenses before. I don't know. I wasn't involved then. This was years ago. But in this case, we have to do another assessment, and they worked well with us. We were just working on a level. That's what's supposed to happen in terms of, you know, the assessment. But each case to their own. We don't treat everybody the same. But that's what it means to make predictions of future harm. When I have a case, or when I assess cases for others, sometimes I have discussions with the social worker, and I'm saying to them, please be very professionally curious on this case. I don't want a baby P situation. I don't want a Sarah Sharif situation. I always wonder, will it be me? Is there something I didn't see? And the thing is, whenever there's a concern for a child, we don't have the right to strip a child down or to go in the way that we want and get what we want. It doesn't work like that legally. It can be borderline harassment. And we have to be careful how we approach, because we have to work with a family. And I'm thinking, sometimes I'm working with a family and I'm thinking, is this child going to die because I didn't try hard enough? And on the other side of that is a parent saying, I hate your guts. Now, I just want to say to you social workers in closing, right? 95% of the families I've worked with work with me. But you will get at least 5% who will be like, I don't want to work with you. And there's risk. And that's tough.